Hey all, Retro here. One thing you may not know about me is I have a fondness for vintage computing software, especially from the 90s era of Microsoft Windows. And over the course of about a month or so, I've been kind of building this small little collection of Microsoft software as well as some other random stuff that we can always get into later. But the issue I've been having is I'm not really sure where to start. Like, what would be a good starting place for that kind of subject matter on this channel? And I don't know exactly if it would perform well or if you guys find it interesting. Just because I find it interesting doesn't mean other people will. And so I kind of wanted to create this video as kind of a place for me to lay out my ideas on the table and kind of cover some of the stuff that I find interesting and kind of see what you guys think of it and what you think I should focus on. So, yeah, we're basically just going to go through some of the stuff on here. I don't think we'll get through everything, but I'll focus on the stuff I'm most interested in this moment, and we'll go from there. That makes sense? All right, let's get into it. And so if we're starting chronologically, then we're actually going to first take a look at my original equipment manufacturer copy of Windows for Workgroups 3.1. Now, this was the last release of 16-bit Windows before the home version at least moved to a 16-bit, 32-bit hybrid, which would become Windows 95. Yeah, obviously, this is quite old at this point in time. This was released in 1993, off the top of my head. But it makes for an interesting subject matter, I imagine, despite how old it is, because I wanted to see how far we could take this operating system and how modern, in quotes, we can make it. Could I daily it? That's the ultimate question. Could you daily this operating system today? Now, there'd realistically be no reason to do so. Basic stuff like, email just isn't going to work. The World Wide Web, most websites aren't going to work at all, if you can even get an internet browser working. But I think it'd make for an interesting video, and I do consider the potential advantages of having an extremely lightweight desktop environment that I could use for some basic productivity with something like Microsoft Office, which we'll get into in a minute. So yeah, just as a curiosity thing, I was wondering how far we could push it. As far as internet browsing goes, the latest you can really run on this is Internet Explorer 5, which is vastly outdated, of course. The last release of Explorer was 11. But there are some older websites that will still work on this, thanks to the efforts of places like the OldNet, which is a collection of old websites that works through archive.org. I recommend you check it out. It's a very cool site, actually. It allows you to essentially experience the old internet in your modern browser without any hiccups or issues. So, yeah, it's a pretty cool website. But in any case, that's basically what my plan is with this. I'm still kind of figuring out the details, but yeah, I think it'd be an interesting experience trying to see how far we could take this old operating system in the year 2024 and see if it's good for anything other than running old programs and a couple of games here and there. Man, I'm just thinking about it now, and yeah, this is going to be interesting. I mean, basic Windows features like the start menu and preemptive multitasking weren't even a thing yet, so you were limited to how many programs you could open before the operating system got unstable, which I guess is still an issue now, but trust me, back in these days it was like 3 programs max before you were having problems, if that. So, yeah, this will be interesting, I reckon. Now, if you're going to seriously use Windows 3, you're going to need some kind of productivity software to get your work done. And so, logically, the only choice, oh my god, for this would be Microsoft Office 4.3 Professional. This was the last Office release designed to work and support 16-bit Windows. After this, the next release, Office 95, only worked on Windows 95. And yeah, this was kind of the end of an era in a way, because if you look at how big each of these books are by the separators, I mean, these are not small pieces of documentation. This is like, I mean, we can look through it real quick, but if my memory serves me correct, yeah, this is like 900 pages or so of just information on how to use a word processor, which is just crazy to me. But yeah, so this is the floppy disk release of the software. It was released on a total of 31 3.5-inch floppy disks. So this would have taken you a good amount of time to install. At least, I'd say 2 hours or so, if you got lucky and you didn't run into any problems. This was also released on a CD to my knowledge, but that release doesn't seem to be as common online, and if you look for it, it tends to be a little bit expensive. So, yeah, the floppy release seems like it was more common, which makes sense, because not everyone had a CD-ROM drive in 1993. But yeah, so, um, yeah, this will be interesting to look through. I don't anticipate I'm going to read all this, but I don't know, it could be interesting. Like, even just Excel has, like, all these different books. Oh, man. And so, naturally, when we're done with Windows 3 and we want to upgrade from it, we have to look at one of the most influential operating systems ever made, Windows 95. Chances are, regardless of how much you know about computers or how old you are, you have heard of this operating system. That's how iconic and influential it was. It was really the turn of a new era for computing. Features like the Start menu made the system much easier to navigate for the average user. Computers were no longer something that only nerds could understand. Your mom and dad and grandma could get into writing emails and stuff. It was a big deal, especially for the time. And so, yeah, we're just going to take a look at the box here and kind of see what kind of goodies are contained in here. It's always interesting looking at these old bits of software and seeing just how different the world was at this point in time. Like, we got advertisements for the Microsoft Network, which was built into 95. That's not irrelevant now, but it's much different compared to how it was back in these days. And it's not really an essential part of Windows like it used to be. But yeah, so we actually got a very basic setup in the box here. We've just got our installation CD. We'll take a quick look at that. Yeah, look at that. Windows 95 upgrade. Nice. And we've got our other random stuff, like you can send this registration card to Microsoft. That's not going to do much nowadays. I mean, you're free to waste your time however you wish, but yeah, this isn't really going to get very far if you try it now. And of course, we've got this little manual here. I say little, it's actually decently long. As a matter of fact, it is exactly 95 pages. Look at that. Oh, man. Good job, Microsoft. But yeah, man, this operating system really was a huge deal when it came out. And it would have been cool to experience it, at least for me. But now we'll be able to on this channel. The plan is I'm going to upgrade the computer from Windows 3 to 95, and we're going to experience the retail release just like it was back in the year 1995. Most people, when they use Windows 95, they use later releases, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if you're going to seriously make a 95 machine for retro gaming or whatever, that's the way to go. But for us, it's going to be about experiencing the operating system just as it was in the year 1995 and seeing what we can do with it and what it's still capable of. And real quick, before we move on, I do want to touch on OEM releases, or original equipment manufacturers. I referred to the Windows 3 copy earlier, because these are the more trimmed down releases that were only sold to manufacturers of computers such as Toshiba, Dell, Hewlett-Packard, that kind of thing. And so yeah, as you can see, this is a much less extravagant package here. It's not even a true box. It's literally just like a shrink wrap around a our slightly smaller Windows 95 manual. And then we've got the special OEM software on the back, as well as the installation CD, I presume. And maybe even a boot disk, which would be nice. That would give us a little DOS environment to work in before we install the OS. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on these real quick in case you weren't exactly sure what they are. They're basically just no BS direct copies designed only to be sold to the equipment manufacturers so they can install the operating system on your computer before it ends up in the retail store and you buy it, take it home, and you already have the operating system installed. That was the idea, at least. Obviously, I have an OEM copy here, so this one never made its way to Toshiba. But yeah, that's the basic rundown of what OEM software is. And one thing I should briefly mention is later releases were only available via OEM. there was never a later release of Windows 95 for retail, despite the fact that several updates came out that added important features such as USB support. There was no way for the consumer to get that other than buy a computer that already had it installed. Kind of a weird bit of Microsoft lore. I have no idea why they did it that way, but hey, what are you going to do? Now, one of the interesting facts about the 90s era of Windows was there was actually 2 separate releases in parallel of the operating system at the same time. As stated before, Windows 95 primarily dominated the home market and was designed to be able to be ran on very modest systems, so even people on their 386s could, in theory, upgrade the operating system and take advantage of all the new features. However, the business market had an entirely different operating system known as Microsoft Windows NT. There was workstation, there was server, there was terminal server. It depended on what type of computer you were running it on, obviously, but the point is this was a totally different operating system. Unlike Windows 95, which was based on the aging DOS codebase, Windows NT was an entirely different codebase designed from the ground up by Microsoft. And this was version 4, which was, at this point in time, the 4th release, as you'd expect, but the thing is, they never actually had an NT1 and NT2. There was NT3, NT 3.5, and 3.51. So this would have been the 4th release at this point. And yeah, what made this a big deal was it was the first release of NT to come with the Windows 95 interface, releasing in 1996. And yeah, the advantage of it was significantly more stable running on the NT kernel, which was not DOS-based. And so, in general, it was a much more stable and reliable experience, and that's exactly what you need in a business environment. And not only that, but it also supported multiple users, which wasn't even an option in 95 at all. You had multiple users, you had improved security, you had stuff like drive encryption. It was a big deal, and the trade-off, of course, was it had higher system requirements, which are highlighted here. And you do need to keep that in mind if you want to install this on actual hardware. But in any case, I find this release of Windows actually more interesting than 95 because of how little it's talked about these days. NT is really not something you see many people use because unless you have a very niche situation where you need to run an old workstation, there's really no reason to use it for something like gaming because it actually is objectively worse for gaming overall, with much worse DirectX support and really only supporting OpenGL games adequately. But despite that, I actually have a massive fondness for it because I admire how reliable it is. Here's the CD we've got here, and one thing you'll notice is the contrast in the artwork is much different compared to 95, but it's similar enough to where you can tell it's still supposed to be Windows. I just like how they made it different enough to be able to tell that they were not the exact same products. It was actually very smart of Microsoft for them to do it that way. And yeah, so that's the installation disk, of course. And then this is the Surface Pack, because this was the release that came on with Surface Pack 4, which gave you some updates. And these are basically setup floppies you could use if your computer BIOS, for whatever reason, couldn't boot from CD-ROM. You could use these to boot instead, and then install it off the CD. And that's actually another thing that NT did differently was these CDs were bootable. You could just boot off the CD, and if your computer supported it, you could install the operating system right away. Not the case with 95. You needed a boot disk to actually boot into a DOS environment before doing so. But yeah, that's the basics of the operating system. And I could go on, but really that's more for a separate video. And what I do have in mind is exactly the type of thing this operating system would have been designed for, and that's a true workstation environment where we would do stuff like 3D rendering, audio and video production, maybe music sequencing via some sort of MIDI software. I think it'd be fun. It'd be interesting, and it'd be cool to use Windows 95, but with a much more stable environment. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let me know what you guys think. And so the very last piece of vintage Microsoft software we're going to look at tonight is Office 97 Standard Edition. This was 2 releases after Office 4.3, and this one was designed for Windows 95 and NT Workstation 4. And this was definitely an upgrade, obviously. You have a much better and simpler interface. You've got more powerful tools. But it is one of those things where Office hadn't completely taken over the market at the time, and there were other competitors that people did prefer to use, such as WordPerfect and so on. But for me personally, I have played with this software before, and I do quite like it. And fun fact about these old versions of Office is documents and spreadsheets and so on created in these will actually work in modern Microsoft Office from like 2021 or whatever you're using. It will still work, which is pretty cool. I love that level of backwards compatibility. So in theory, if we're talking about the NT4 workstation that I just mentioned, this could actually work as a sort of productivity operating system because realistically, I've got everything I need here. I've got PowerPoint, I've got Word, and I've got Excel. And Outlook, which is not really relevant because that's email stuff. But otherwise, this would work. This would be enough to, get my work done and work on YouTube scripts and whatever else I needed to do. So, yeah, we're going to take a look at the box here because I do want to highlight the contrast compared to Office 4.3, which we just talked about. And, yeah, so there's something interesting going on here I will mention in a sec. But, yeah, the big piece of the software here is really just this. This is our CD release. And yeah, we've just got this. Now that's it, just a CD. You don't need to install 31 floppy disks or anything. You just insert the CD, they'll probably install in like 5 to 10 minutes, and you're ready to get to work. What we've also got in here, I don't know how this got here, but this came with the copy you got on eBay, was a Office 97 Small Business Edition. I've actually never heard of this before. I don't know what exactly it is. My understanding is it's a slightly customized version of Office with special software. Yeah, so we've got Small Business Financial Manager. Okay, so this is like Office Standard Edition, but some additional specific software that could have been beneficial for someone trying to maintain a business and didn't have a massive amount of manpower. They could just use this to help them complete other tasks that would be harder without it. And this floppy disk, I'm not going to get into this, but it is basically someone's personal data that I guess they just packaged with this box here. And I have no idea how they forgot about that. But, time goes on, and you don't think to look through your old stuff. And that's how it ends up in the hands of someone like me. And, yeah, frankly, I'm probably going to wipe the disk because I don't feel like it's right for me to have possession of that data since it's not mine. I don't have any right to it. And yeah, so anyways, so yeah, much simpler setup we've got going on here. This is pretty much it. There isn't even like a manual or anything. The manual is all digital. The rest of the stuff is just like a rebate and coupon if you wanted to install the floppy version, which this did release on floppy. I believe this was the last piece of Microsoft software to release on floppy. And it was a total of 46 diskettes, so you'd have to be pretty insane to want to do that, but yep. So that's that, basically. And so yeah, everybody, that's just about going to do it for tonight. Thank you for tuning in. I apologize if this video was kind of erratically filmed and not tightly edited. That wasn't really the point. Again, it was for me to, in this case, literally lay my ideas out and kind of just talk about what I'm thinking and what my plans are. I really want to get a video out there for you guys to indulge in and have it be something that was pretty relaxing and kind of something you could play in the background. Maybe this is nostalgic for some of you that have been on YouTube for a long time, as this video just kind of have that very mellow vibe to it that was common with the older YouTube. Not any kind of background music, very lightly edited, and basically just someone holding up an inanimate object and trying to make it interesting and being like, yeah, look at how cool this is. But in any case, yeah, thank you very much for watching. The drill. Subscribe if you like what you see, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.